Hello, Tim here. Welcome to Shop Talk with Tim. Today I'm going to tell you a little backstory, actually a backstory about back saws. And some of my earliest memories are sawing wood. My favorite tools when I was a little kid were just simply a saw and a hammer. Of course, a hammer is the easiest thing because everything's a nail then, and you can hit things. But sawing wood was always a little bit more difficult because it took a lot more work, and maybe the wood was a hardwood that I didn't know at the time. Maple was hard to saw and to nail through. But in my earliest days, my dad had a bunch of tools, and I start with the biggest one first. This is a back saw, and when you say a back saw, what does that mean? So your traditional, saws come in all different kinds of shapes and sizes and purposes. This is just a regular cutoff saw and fine tooth. And there's saws like this that are a little bit bigger, that have more jagged teeth, like 8 teeth per inch or 6 teeth for ripping. So this one's for sawing across the grain. This is a crosscut saw, and the ripping saw would go this direction. You can use this one to do that, but it's a lot more work. Bigger teeth make the work go easier. So when you're trying to make a straight cut sometimes, or you're trying to just go down a little ways, making this saw, you can do a lot of work with this, but it's too flexible for joinery work. And so the back saw is simply a saw that has a back to it. It's got a spine. And I have this is my biggest one. That was my grandfather's. And I have a couple of them that were my grandfather's. And here's my smallest one that I made a little tiny miter box for. Now the back saw, because it's rigid, you can push it and the blade doesn't flex. And they're sometimes used for cutting dovetails and tenons on your joinery. This one, which I'm really happy to have, belonged to my grandfather, is Stanley saw that he would take to job sites. He was a carpenter, and he'd install trim. And the unique thing about this saw was never used apart from the miter box. This is a whole system in itself. And so the miter box, unlike a small one, and there's ones you can get that would be, this is probably your standard size back saw that you'd have a wooden miter box for. You can make a miter box fairly easily. But this one's got a little more precision, and you can do multiple stops. As you can see, these numbers for 45 or 812. I'm trying to remember what this 8-sided, like if you're going to do an octagon, you put it on the 8. And you can see some of the different areas in between. Over the years, I've used it, and I've had it cut down into this bed a little too far. I didn't have the stops here and here set right. Some of the things I've learned about back saws is just by trial and error. And I was in junior high, perhaps, I had a favorite saw that I'd always go to, and it was this one. And this was my grandfather's. This is just a nice size back saw for joinery work. But as a kid, I used to just play with this one because it was easy to control. And one time I took it on a camping trip, and it's not a backpack saw. I learned that, and I destroyed the handle. It broke, and I didn't want my dad to find out about it, so I actually carved the new handle. So this is not the original handle, but you can see the difference in the handles here, how nicely shaped that is. This is the original handle. That's the one that I carved. So I had this this a little bit longer, the same kind of saw. And when you're doing joinery work, it's essential to have a back saw. One of the tools I've been using over the years, these are two of my favorite. This is a dovetail saw, much finer teeth, and this one's a Japanese pull saw, and this really does the finest cut. So I've used this one. As you can tell, it's got a little bit of glue on it still for something I was doing, maybe trimming off a tenon or something that had been glued up. But these two are essential tools. One that rarely gets used, and these two are very similar in that you can remove the blade and sharpen the Japanese blade, you just buy a new one. And same with this one. This is an Eclipse brand. It's made in England, Sheffield, England. And these teeth on here are so fine that they're used for like cutting fret slots in a guitar. You're making a guitar. And I made a banjo one time, and I use this for that. And for really fine work, I use this. But this blade, you can reverse it, so you can make it a pull saw as well. But this is kind of nice. You can guide it like this. I sometimes use my small miter box for this too. And that's handy if you're going to do inlay work. Like this is a little piece of ebony. And if you're going to be doing a little string inlay or something like that, that's the purpose of that. Bigger stuff like crown molding, and the feature of this I really like. You can adjust these stops to keep your workpiece from sliding back and forth. And it might be hard to see on the camera, but there's some little pins right here that guide the piece from sliding back and forth. And I love working with this saw. I used to bring it to job sites too to install crown molding or door trim or something like that. The only problem is you got to be on the money when you cut it, because unlike a power saw, you can't just shave off a whisker of it. If you need to take off another 1/4 inch, you might be able to get away with doing that, but you can't take like a 32nd off if it's too long. But other than that, you get used to working with this. It's a beautiful tool. Some time ago, about two years ago, coming up to 3, I had a major saw accident with a power miter saw, and ever since then, I pulled this out of storage. I had this in storage because it was just kind of in the way, but because I have it, I decided that I'm just going to use it. And so this is kind of my go-to saw for doing a quick cut, even though I'm not doing production now. If I had to do a lot of production and you set up a stop and you're running pieces, you want to be able to have it all accurate and not have to measure each piece. This has been very good for just therapy-wise and memory-wise. I'm keeping an old tool alive, and I suppose it's a little bit nostalgic for me. This bench here, I usually have this fixed down on my bench so it doesn't slide around. This is kind of my designated miter bench. This saw is memorable to me because I worked for one of my first woodworking jobs in his shop. He sold tools and gave this to me as a Christmas present one year. And this is brass back. It's only one brass back. It's made in Sheffield, England. And I don't use these that much in normally what I do. You don't, for doing wood turning or carving, you don't do much need for a back saw. But when I do joinery, I do. The tools that I have here evoke memories, and that's kind of what I would call play on words, maybe with a backstory. But the story is that everything I pick up, and sometimes old tools, like my camping saw, Just reminds me of a story, even though I don't use it. Right now it's just kind of a souvenir piece, if you will. So that's the story of my my back saws, and I don't know how ancient they are, but it's always fun to use vintage tools. So I'm just gonna end with this here. Okay. So the final cut on this is a little rougher than a chop saw would do, but it glues up really nicely. So because you got a little bit more rough surface, and make your miter joint like so. So that's my backstory of my back saw, and it gives you a reason. It's not an all-purpose saw, but it's a very useful tool for the cabinet maker, the joiner, carpenter, and people making picture frames and whatever. So thanks for watching, and please give it a thumbs up if you would, and happy sawing. We'll see you next time.